Your Honor, I want to start out by saying that when the state's team approached what we'd be asking for, and certainly a number of people asked us, what's the issue at sentencing? It's a life sentence, and of course, as this court knows, the biggest decision Your Honor has is whether Ms. Kurczewski ever gets the chance at parole. And I would think as a judge you'd have to evaluate that by really trying to look into the future and trying to see any redeemable qualities a person might have. And I think as I go through my sentencing remarks, you will see that Ms. Kurczewski has demonstrated really that she has none, and that she's only a future risk to the whole community if she's given another chance to victimize people. She will do it. So I want to start out by Ms. Kurczewski's background prior to even coming into custody on this case. And it goes back to February of 2010, where she was charged and ultimately convicted for what's commonly referred to as ID theft. Certainly some of these came in at trial briefly, but not all of her prior crimes. And in February of 2010, Ms. Kurczewski was working at a health clinic when several patients of that health clinic were contacted by their financial institutions to be informed that loans were being applied for in their name with their personal information. And it came to bear that Ms. Kurczewski was using her position as a receptionist at that health clinic to steal these individuals' information and apply for 8 different loans, 2 of which were honored in the total amount of $4,000. When she was caught and arrested, she did say that she did this because she wanted to pay her rent and had been out of work for 6 months. And this will become a theme of Ms. Kurczewski, that instead of working harder or getting a better paying job, she finds ways to steal, con people out of their own money, or money that isn't even with them yet when she applies for loans in their name. For that conviction, along with several others that she was sentenced for at the same time, she received 1 year of initial confinement and 3 years of extended supervision. While that case was pending, between March and April of 2010, so the consecutive months, there was conduct that was never charged but used as a read-in offense in the Milwaukee courts, where she was again taking out payday loans in other people's name. Over those 2 months, she did it to the tune of $12,502. Again, that, similar to what we saw in this trial, involved essentially a shell game using different vehicles and using those as leverage to obtain title loans from title loan companies. In fact, as of April 2010, the Milwaukee Sheriff's Department reports indicated that payday loan was reported to be owed $22,343 in fraudulent loans that Ms. Kurczewski had taken out with them. Then in July of 2010, in a case that was charged and was brought up briefly in this trial, the defendant used her own mother's identification to try and obtain a loan from payday loans. Workers there recognized Ms. Kurczewski almost immediately due to her past conduct over the previous months. They sort of delayed her and contacted police while Ms. Kurczewski sort of waited for this loan to process. When the police came and confronted Ms. Kurczewski, as became another theme throughout this trial, when she realizes she's in trouble, she tells just lies. Bold, nonsensical lies. And so at age 26, she tried to convince the officers who were speaking with her that she was her 46-year-old mother. She was able to produce a driver's license, a social security card, and even her own mother's checkbook to try and substantiate. The police, with good common sense, did not believe her, told her that the payday loan store people recognized her as somebody who would rip them off, at which time Ms. Kurczewski just tried to leave, and then when not allowed to leave, again changed her story, lied, and now tried saying she had the permission of her mother. In that case, when police went to talk to the defendant's mother to see if that was true, the mother at that time stated that it was not true, and that this is what Ms. Kurczewski does, and she was ruining the family's lives with her fraudulent ways. Then, in September of 2010, she was now charged with forgery, along with multiple counts of felony bail jumping. There, after stealing from her mother, she went to live with a friend in a upper-lower duplex, as I understand it, where the friend's mother lived downstairs. Well, the mother and Ms. Kurczewski's friend were off working. Ms. Kurczewski, who was not working, helped herself to the victims, that being her friend's mother, her driver's license, social security card, and a copy of that individual's We Energies bill, pretended to be that victim when calling the financial institution to add herself to that victim's account, and tried to obtain loans there as well. She was sentenced for that offense as well to 1 year of initial confinement and 3 years extended supervision. In yet another case of forgery in October of 2010, after she had now been kicked out of her mother's house and kicked out of her friend's house after stealing from them, she was staying at the Mainstay Suites in Oak Creek and was found to have been passing bad checks to pay for her rent there. Again, when she was convicted of that forgery, one additional fact, when she was made to wait in the lobby to talk to police about passing a bad, what purported to be a certified cashier's check, another fraudulent document, she identified herself as her mother again, and then finally, when police said there was no way that was possible, she did not look 46 years old, she now admits she lied, and knew that she had 3 warrants for her arrest on the previous cases at the time. When she was convicted of that, she was given 1 year of initial confinement and 3 years extended supervision, consecutive, for a total in January of 2011, when she was sentenced, to 2 years of initial confinement and 6 years extended supervision. She served her confinement time until release on extended supervision on October 9th of 2012. By November of 2013, she was placed on a hold in relation to a first offense OWI conviction of hers. That hold, went till November 25th, 2013. And then a few short weeks later, on December 9th, 2013, she was again placed on a hold for a fraud offense. That hold lasted until March 27th of 2014, at which time she was formally revoked and was officially sent back to prison until February 23rd of 2016. So really about 26 months of time there. That February 23rd, 2016 release date is crucial to this case because really only months after her release from prison for a number of financial crimes where she simply did not care who she affected, whose lives she ruined or at least inconvenienced, she started this very sinister plot. And I think that's the absolute appropriate word for it. Remember what those closest to Lynn Hernon said at trial, that in summer of 2016 is when they started noticing Lynn Hernon becoming sick. Yes, a lot was made about certain back problems going back to the 90s and perhaps other health problems related to just natural aging process, but something in 2016 was different to those closest. She was going to the doctor, going to the hospitals for stomach issues, and we went through a great many medical records, and the very consistent thing was that the doctors couldn't figure out what was happening to her. And I'm not here to argue beyond a reasonable doubt that the poisoning started back in 2016, but what I know happened in 2016 was Ms. Kurczewski started getting checks in very large quantities that were outside Ms. Hernon's normal pattern. You saw that Anthony Posa, for his graduation, got a check from Lynn for $200, and that was pretty large sum for Lynn Hernon to write out to people. And yet at the same time, Ms. Kurczewski is receiving checks for $2,000, and it goes on to be $10,000, $13,000, multiple times. And that all started in the middle of 2016. Additionally, in 2016 is when those closest to Lynn Hernon felt like she was becoming more distant. And I think this court has seen enough cases where that's a pattern of con artists, of diabolical people, to try and separate their target from people who might step in and say, something's off here. Somebody who might step in and say, Lynn, where is all your money going? Let's check it out. Somebody who might say, who is this Jessy Kurczewski woman who's all of a sudden in your life, answering your phone, telling us things? And that's what Ms. Kurczewski did here. When we talk about the theft, it went on between mid-2016 all the way up until the date of death. And I think it's absolutely an aggravated theft, as aggravated as it gets. Not just because of the amount taken, tens of thousands of dollars, not just because the duration it went on for, but it was undeniably Ms. Kurczewski's biggest motive to kill Lynn Hernon. There were two real motives that I can see, both born out of complete greed. A, Ms. Kurczewski knew that prison awaited for her if she was caught. She had been to prison before for these exact same offenses. She didn't want to go back to prison. And B, and the real cold-hearted motive here, is that Lynn Hernon was out of money. Ms. Kurczewski had taken it all. She had maxed out those credit cards. She had used up the $250,000 that Lynn Hernon was worth upon Ms. Kurczewski's release date from prison in February of 2016. And Lynn Hernon was simply of no value, unfortunately, to Ms. Kurczewski anymore, except if Ms. Hernon was dead. Because as Ms. Kurczewski showed us, the very next day, she's going into that bank lockbox, taking whatever was in there. She knows she's the PR of the estate, and what does she do, Judge? She continues stealing tens of thousands of dollars. This was absolutely a premeditated crime, and we know that because in May of 2018, Ms. Kurczewski is telling those closest to her, her boyfriend, her live-in boyfriend, Scott Craig, that Lynn is in a coma at Frederick Hospital and she's probably going to die. Ms. Kurczewski had already set the stage for what she was going to do. In July of 2018, we know she's downloading PDF files to her phone. Criminal Poisoning was the title of one. There's 3 separate PDFs downloaded, all dealing with cyanide. There's one PDF entitled, Have an Exit Strategy, Chemical Suicides. And another simply titled, Household Poisons. We know these were being accessed by Ms. Kurczewski in July of 2018. We also know that she deleted those in February of 2019, after the medical examiner's office told her they were not allowed to give her any more information about Lynn Hernon's cause of death, when she starts to see the walls closing in around her. We had to recover those. They were deleted, but nevertheless accessed on her phone 3 months before Lynn Hernon's murder. Again, even when Ms. Hernon was in the hospital and we heard Jim Kelleher's calling her, trying to make plans, Ms. Hernon didn't answer her phone. Ms. Kurczewski answered her phone and told Jim Kelleher that his longtime friend did not like him anymore and he should stop calling, never call her again. Again, attempts to isolate even a week before her murder. So the theft in Lynn Hernon's life is absolutely as aggravated as it could possibly be, Your Honor. And we would ask for a maximum sentence there of 5 years initial confinement, 5 years extended supervision. There's simply nothing mitigated about that. Ms. Kurczewski had no less than 2 years to stop herself, to say, this isn't right. This is somebody I consider a family member. And she didn't. She just kept going until Lynn was worth nothing to her. And then she killed her. We talk about the premeditation of that murder. I also want to talk about how remorseless she's been. From the very beginning, Ms. Kurczewski poisoned Lynn Hernon that morning, left her house, knowing what was going to happen. You saw she researched tetrahydrozoline poisoning. She was well aware of what it would do to somebody. And she left Ms. Hernon to die alone And she didn't even give it a second thought. Instead, what she did was go and immediately try to open a JCPenney account in Miss Hernan's name. She bought a big screen TV and some other electronics from a business in Illinois. And she spent a good amount of money at Kohl's on Lynn Hernan's card. That's what she did, knowing her so-called friend, what was portrayed as a mother figure in defense opening, knowing she was dying. What else? We know that Ms. Kurczewski did come back to find Ms. Hernan dead. That's true. Maybe the only true thing she said in this whole case. But we know that when she found her dead, she didn't grieve, she didn't regret, she got to work. She said, I'm going to get in trouble for this unless people believe it's a suicide. And she got to work crushing up pills, sprinkling them on Lynn Hernan's dead body, making it look like a suicide. No remorse, no second thought, no my God, what have I done? Just getting to work, covering tracks, lying. That's who Ms. Kurczewski is. And then, of course, continuing as personal representative to steal tens of thousands of dollars from the estate, helping herself to whatever it was that she wanted. Not one day thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. I've already stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars. I killed my friend. Enough. No, not one day has she regretted what she did. I'm sure she regrets getting caught, but she spent that money on nonsensical things. Buying bars full of people drinks and food, spending it on slot machines, going to Potawatomi. That's ultimately what she killed Lynn Hernan for. Her stupid video game slot machines and being popular at the bar because she was tipping big and buying people rounds and buying people food. That's what Lynn Hernan was worth to her. Even after that, when she was arrested and the estate case was in contention, Ms. Kurczewski had the gall from prison to file documents 81 and 82 of that 18 PR 561 case, where she tried to convince Judge Maxwell that Anthony Posa failed Lynn's real test. And we heard about that a little bit in trial, with this fake will and how it was all a sham and Anthony failed. He failed the test. And she had the gall to ask Judge Maxwell to not only remove him as the new personal representative, but Ms. Kurczewski tried taking more money. She said Judge Maxwell should award her Anthony Posa's $13,597 payout, which was all that was left from what should have been a larger estate. She didn't even want Anthony to have that small amount relative to what he should have gotten when Ms. Hernan passed. Her greed knows no end, Your Honor. I want to talk about the other very overarching theme of all this, Ms. Kurczewski's lies. Attorney Nikolai said it best in trial that when Ms. Kurczewski's in trouble, she lies. She doesn't care who's caught in the wake of that lie. She doesn't care who gets in trouble. She doesn't care whose reputation is ruined. She doesn't care whose financial accounts get ruined. She just cares that she doesn't get in trouble. And we heard that applies to everybody. To those closest to her, Scott Craig and his family, she told them that she was working all that time she lived with them, and that was simply not true. She went to the lengths to get up and get ready and put on nursing scrubs and pretend to go to a job she did not have. The big lie, of course, was that she told Scott and his whole family that Lynn was in a coma. She didn't just stop there. She told Scott's family, his kids specifically, that Freighter Hospital, which Lynn was never at, violated her do not resuscitate. Again, very detailed lies to convince, to gain people's confidence, to try and trick them so she doesn't get in trouble. She lied to the police. She staged the crime scene. You heard the immense number of times she changed her story. What began as she didn't know, and she would be surprised to think Lynn was suicidal. Went through several iterations, really ending with her having to pull a gun out of Lynn's hand because Lynn was about to shoot herself in the head, she claimed. We now know that's an absolute lie. It was Ms. Kurczewski buying 2 guns. That's very concerning. That would indicate that at some point along the way, Ms. Kurczewski's plan may have been to shoot Lynn Hernan. That ultimately ended up with the defense telling this jury and trying to convince this jury that Lynn was drinking Visine every day and wanted to kill herself, trying to portray her as a pill-popping alcoholic. And that was not true. But again, if Ms. Kurczewski can avoid trouble, what does she care? She lied about having exculpatory evidence. And perhaps the most ridiculous statement she made out of all of them was her telling Detective Hoppy that she had evidence that would prove her innocent. And when Detective Hoppy said, "Great, where is it?" she said, "I'm not ready to give it to you." And then it was, "Check the lockbox." In April of 2019, she tells Detective Hoppy to check the lockbox that she knows she cleaned out on October 4th, 2018. When that didn't work, she shifts again. Now there's a storage unit somewhere. And she laughingly says, "There was never any storage locker. I made that up. I was going to get one, never did. Ha ha ha." No remorse, no understanding of what she did and that she's caught. What's my next lie? What's my next lie? Think quick. And so we go to this absolute asinine idea of her burying evidence in Whitnall Park. And I think Ms. Kurczewski is the type of person that believes if she says things loud enough and long enough, people will think it must be true. We don't even have to waste our time. It must be true. But she's always going to lose with people like Detective Hoppy, who said, "Fine, you think there's things buried in Whitnall Park? I'm going to send my detective out on a hot July day, 100-degree weather, and he's going to dig up Whitnall Park where you tell him to. We're not going to let you get away with this. We're not going to let you sit and think and tell this judge there's still evidence buried in Whitnall Park." They followed through with every one of her nonsensical lies to prove that that is what she is, an out-and-out pathological liar. The same will be true about the letters we referenced in December 12th, and I'll get there. So she's lied to those closest to her. She's lied to the police. She's lied to courts. She's filed a fake will in Judge Maxwell's court in the probate case. And she lied to Your Honor on December 12th when she told you concerning this packet of letters that was found after trial. She sat here and adamantly declared to you she did not write them, that somebody must be setting her up. And I would tell Your Honor that what we've learned about Ms. Kurczewski is that she often likes to use phrases as, "I swear to God, I'm telling you the truth. I'm not lying." And every single time, the very next statement that comes out of her mouth is a lie. She told Your Honor on December 12th she absolutely did not write these letters. Corrections officers were interviewed to see if they helped her. That's a mark on their reputation, that they would even be suspected of that. But it had to be looked into because she said she didn't do this, and yet they were on her trial notes. She wanted people to believe that somebody went through the garbage, got her trial notes, and tried setting her up for a case she had already been convicted of. She doesn't care, though. She doesn't care about the reputation of anybody as long as she can avoid trouble. So I'd like to share my screen at this point, Madam Clerk, if I could. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Put it on preview first. Is that what you want?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So, Judge, and I'm presenting the judge, Your Honor, first showing it to Attorney Jones. This is the original envelope. I know Your Honor's already seen it. I can mark it as an exhibit after. But I want Your Honor to be able to look at that, specifically the seal of that envelope, where you'll see a white substance near the tear of that seal.
It's on the back.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
So what I'm playing is jail video from Ms. Kurczewski's pod. To orient Your Honor, Ms. Kurczewski is in the cot on the left side of the screen, 2 up from the bottom, coming off the left wall there. You can see her legs extended straight in front of her. You can't see her head, but you can see what appears to be a sheet of paper on her lap.
Would that be on the, what appears to be a blue in color bed sheet?
Correct. And I want this court to remember that it was Ms. Kurczewski on December 12th who said multiple times, check the videos, check the videos. When you see these videos, I believe you will agree that Ms. Kurczewski said that confidently to try and dissuade people from looking at these videos. And what I can tell you before I play this, and you can see in the lower left corner, this video is from November 21st, 2023 at 7:25 p.m. You'll notice on that envelope that it went out of the jail on November 22nd, 2023. I can also tell you as an officer of the court, if we played more video, you would see that Ms. Kurczewski had just been transferred to this pod, pod 3, at approximately 6:30 p.m. that same night, November 21st. From there, again, if I played all of the video, you would see her sort of clean her cot area, set up her bed, put all of her documents into some gray metal bins that I believe inmates can lock up and secure their documents. And then at 7:25, when I play, I'm just going to play a brief portion of this. What you're going to see is Ms. Kurczewski take various papers, put them into a gold envelope, and towards the end of this clip, you're going to see her not be able to seal the envelope. And as Detective Plennis watched this, you're going to see what we believe her using toothpaste to try and rub on that seal to ultimately seal this envelope. And so I'm playing from 7:25:06. There's no audio. And I'm pausing at 7:26:27. From there, Ms. Kurczewski sits in her bed. I'm going to fast forward and go to a different camera angle, this being Unit B Sleep 1 angle, at 8:01:47 p.m. that same date. As it plays, we can see Ms. Kurczewski has walked across the sleeping area of this particular pod holding something. I would direct your attention to the top cots, the second one from the left, where Ms. Kurczewski is now headed, where she has placed an item on that mattress. That mattress belongs to an inmate, and I'm pausing at 8:02:19. That cot belonged to an inmate named Amy Hanna, who was housed with Ms. Kurczewski at the time. Fast forwarding to 8:07:14, just a few minutes later, we are going to see Ms. Hanna come into picture and go to her cot. I'm sorry, let me skip ahead just a little bit. Picking up at 8:08 exactly. We can see Miss Hannah is at her cot currently. She has picked up that item Ms. Kurczewski left on her bed. And Miss Hannah leaves the sleeping area sort of leaning up against a wall for a few moments before ultimately leaving at 8:08:34. We're going to pick Miss Hannah up at that same exact spot on what's labeled Pod 3, Unit B, Day. So again, the same exact timestamp, 8:08:34 there at the bottom. And we can now clearly see what that item is a large gold envelope that clearly Ms. Kurczewski left on her bed. Pausing at 8:08:46. There's another camera angle that would simply show Ms. Hannah handing that gold envelope off to the corrections officer in the immediate adjoining room there. And that corrections officer places it in a tray behind his desk until 11:15 or so, when the corrections officer's shift is over. As per jail policy, when the officer on duty's shift is over, they take all of the mail down to a mail room inside the jail. That's exactly what happened here. There is a moment from that camera angle where the CO sets that envelope that Ms. Hannah gave him after Ms. Kurczewski left it on her bed. I would direct your attention, I know it's a grainy image that I zoomed in on, but I think you can clearly see the two stamps appear to be the same exact ones on that envelope that was ultimately received by the woman who reported to the sheriff's deputy that had all of Ms. Kurczewski's instructions to create new evidence in this case. You have now seen the direct trail from Ms. Kurczewski's bed to Amy Hannah's bed to the CO station. One thing we were wrong about back in December was that this absolutely did go out through the mail. The Waukesha County Jail, we've learned, contracts with a private business that collects all the mail. Eventually it does go to the post office, but I believe because it was stamped as having been mailed from the jail, it doesn't go through the normal processing of the post office where they stamp over the postage stamps, for example, that we see in our normal everyday mail. Again, you can see that went out the following day on November 22nd. The woman who received that envelope told Detective Plennis that it absolutely, she was convinced, came from Jessy Kurczewski. Detective Plennis didn't stop there, though, after finding this video. He went and spoke, and we can stop sharing my screen now, please. Thank you. He went and spoke with Ms. Hannah on December 22nd of 2023. Ms. Hannah was not given anything. She did not ask for any consideration. Her case had been resolved by that point. I believe she was waiting to go to prison. But Detective Plennis asked her if she mailed out any items for Ms. Kurczewski. She said yes. She said that after our December 12th hearing, when the letters and envelope were shown on the news stations, Ms. Hannah got scared and asked Ms. Kurczewski if that's what she mailed out. Again, you might not be surprised to learn Ms. Kurczewski lied to Ms. Hannah and said, no, I wouldn't get you involved in something like that, not at all. But then Detective Plennis showed Ms. Hannah the envelope that Your Honor has before you and said, does this appear to be it? And Ms. Hannah said, yes it is, I'm pretty sure, because I remember that, while pointing to the J in the recipient's first name. Ms. Hannah then became visibly upset when realizing that she mailed this for Kurczewski and stated she did not know what was in it or written on the papers inside. Your Honor rightfully asked for more information regarding that packet in December, and I think we've shown you now well beyond reasonable doubt that Ms. Kurczewski sat here and lied to Your Honor on December 12th when she said she did not write those things. Now that we know for sure that she did, we have to consider the effects of that. I told you about the corrections officers that had to be interviewed by detectives in their own department. That's a certain level of embarrassment. Ms. Hannah had to be brought down. That comes with a certain risk in the jail if people know you're being brought down to talk to detectives. In fact, detectives were very wise to move Ms. Kurczewski's location, something she complained about to Your Honor, because they did not want her housed with Ms. Hannah after Ms. Hannah gave us this information. Additionally, you'll recall that the entire reason we couldn't go to sentencing on December 12th because Ms. Kurczewski, after Attorney Kukler and Attorney Galaviz worked hard for years to give her a defense, she within days did not care and threw them under the bus, building into her letters that it was their idea. She always tries to build in escape routes for herself. If I get caught, I have this way out. But it doesn't work when people dedicated, like the detectives behind me, follow them all up. Say, okay, maybe she's not going to be on video because she was adamant that we watch the videos. That didn't stop Detective Plennis. He watched hours and hours of jail video to come up with those clips to say, okay, we got you. And what does that mean, Your Honor? It was said by somebody who was closest to her in her life during this trial that she is diabolical. I think that's absolutely true. She could have said nothing. It's one thing to not be remorseful and not say, I'm sorry, and to maintain your innocence. That's one thing. It's a completely different thing to try and cook up evidence, to try and convince other people to cook up evidence for you, to try and continue making this look like a suicide, when Ms. Kurczewski knows well that she killed Lynn Hernan, and she did it for greed. And so I want to leave you with this. Ms. Kurczewski did not just steal hundreds of thousands of dollars. As you heard at the beginning of this presentation from Jim and Anthony, what she stole was a woman who enjoyed spending holidays with her close group of friends, like making snack mix, like making food to bring over to the party. But on a more in-depth level, what Ms. Kurczewski stole from this community, from Lynn Hernan's community, she stole birthday parties and birthday gifts from Jim Kelleher. She stole daily phone calls and lunches with Keith Lang. She stole lunchtime drop-ins and conversations about her dad's war experience with Anthony Poza. She stole handwritten birthday cards every year from Corinne Poza. She has not 1 second shown any regret or remorse. All she has shown is more wild and ridiculous lies that we have tracked down every time. And so she's going to get the chance to talk to Your Honor. And I would bet that she's going to say things like, I swear to you, I'm telling you the truth, I'm not lying. And I want you to remember, Your Honor, as you listen to that every statement that comes after things like that is an absolute lie. She has earned that reputation, that you cannot trust a single word she says. And so I tried to look for any reason why life without a chance at parole is appropriate, and it's absolutely not. She will victimize again if she's given the chance. She should absolutely not get that chance. She should go to life and never have a chance at parole. She should be sentenced to the maximum 5 years initial confinement on each of the theft counts and the 5 years extended supervision, and those should be run consecutive. That's the state's recommendation, remembering and acknowledging today is about Lynn Hernan, who was left because of this defendant to die alone and leave all her close friends behind. Thank you.